What if there were a literary bloodline, a literary tree, so to speak, with a sturdy, indestructible trunk and myriad branches that host our winged imaginations, a tree with unfathomably deep roots that feed all the mycelia of our creative lives down in the understory, that is, the realm of the unknown or the mystery. And our work would be to locate ourselves among the roots and branches, that is, to discover our literary foremothers and literary forefathers, to prepare to receive our inheritance. In conjunction with my free upcoming class on Zoom, a convocation of literary ancestors, in which we'll be summoning our literary ancestors, I'd like to present two of my literary foremothers. And there's a link in the caption to register for the course, which is on Sunday, January 25th. The first one is Angela Carter, and I'm going to begin with a quotation from her. I write overblown, purple, self-indulgent prose. So fucking what? And the second quotation is, the short story is not minimalist, it is rococo. I feel in absolute control. It is like writing chamber music rather than symphonies. Angela Carter found her roots in a love of fairy tales, which she reimagined in glorious ways. Now we see writers, often women writers, taking fairy tales as their guiding texts and reinventing them in myriad ways. But Carter published The Bloody Chamber in 1979, nearly 50 years ago. She died in 1992. What I admire about her writing is the voluptuousness of it, coupled with the precision of each image. It's almost like a slap where you're arrested there and you find yourself needing to take a breath. Robert Macfarlane says, precision is a function of lyricism, and Carter's work is the epitome of this. Each word on the page is deliberate and totally earned, and that taught me something indispensable. Exposition cannot hold a candle to a type of writing that is so immersive and vital, in which every moment is heightened and dramatized. Carter conjures up images that are everlasting, ones that will echo throughout the story, and she plumbs each of those images with a depth and resonance that is breathtaking. Here is a brief excerpt from The Bloody Chamber. How my circumstances had changed since the first time I had heard those voluptuous chords that carry such a charge of deathly passion in them. Now we sat in a loge in red velvet armchairs, and a braided, bewigged flunky brought us a silver bucket of champagne in the interval. The froth spilled over the rim of my glass and drenched my hands. I thought, my cup runneth over. And I had on a poiree dress. He had prevailed upon my reluctant mother to let him buy my trousseau. What would I have gone to him in otherwise? Twice darned underwear, faded gingham, serge skirts, hand-me-downs. So for the opera, I wore a sinuous shift of white muslin, tied with a silk string under the breasts, and everyone stared at me and at his wedding gift. His wedding gift clasped round my throat. A choker of rubies, 2 inches wide, like an extraordinarily precious slit throat. After the terror in the early days of the Directory, the aristos who escaped the guillotine had an ironic fad of lying a red ribbon round their necks at just the point where the blade would have sliced through. A red ribbon like the memory of a wound. and his grandmother, taken with the notion, had her ribbon made up in rubies. Such a gesture of luxurious defiance. That night at the opera comes back to me even now. The white dress, the frail child within it, and the flashing crimson jewels round her throat, bright as arterial blood. My second literary foremother is Toni Morrison. Here's a quotation from her. Books are a form of political action. Books are knowledge. Books are reflection. Books change your mind. She died in 2019, and she is one of the great writers in the firmament of American fiction. As you probably know, she won the Nobel Prize for Literature, the Pulitzer Prize in Fiction, the National Book Award, and many others. She was also an eminent editor for decades, editing Lucille Clifton, Gail Jones, June Jordan, and others. I read her novel Sula in my first year as an undergraduate, and it slayed me. The violence in the novel is visceral and stunning, and it made all the novels I had read before it seem pallid. It also helped me to understand how formulaic most scenes of violence are. It helped me to see how the depiction of violence served the writer's view of what violence was supposed to look like and little else. I was captivated, and I could not stop thinking about the novel, especially about the character of Sula, who is both completely free and also hated by the townspeople of Medallion. I had never read a book that posited the freedom of a woman in quite the way that Morrison does with Sula. But it was the friendship between Nell and Sula that blew me away. It was as if Morrison were describing something I had lived, but until reading the novel, I had no words for. And that is the way that each girl in the book functions as an unseen witness to the other's dreams and fantasies. Morrison depicts the relationship between the two girls as a kind of doubling or twinship. This one line captivated me. Technicolored visions that always included a presence, a someone who, quite like the dreamer, shared the delight of the dream. It names so simply and eloquently the notion of witnessing, and at the same time encapsulated the idea of interiority in fiction. This is an excerpt from Sula. It was in dreams that the two girls had first met. Long before Edna Finch's Mellow House opened, even before they marched through the chocolate halls of Garfield Primary School, out onto the playground and stood facing each other through the ropes of the one vacant swing. Go on. No, you go. They had already made each other's acquaintance in the delirium of their noon dreams. They were solitary little girls whose loneliness was so profound it intoxicated them and sent them stumbling into technicolor visions that always included a presence, a someone who, quite like the dreamer, shared the delight of the dream. When Nell, an only child, sat on the steps of her back porch, surrounded by the high silence of her mother's incredibly orderly house, feeling the neatness pointing at her back, she studied the poplars and fell easily into a picture of herself lying on a flowered bed, tangled in her own hair, waiting for some fiery prince. He approached but never quite arrived, but always watching the dream along with her were some smiling, sympathetic eyes. Someone as interested as she herself in the flow of her imagined hair, the thickness of the mattress of flowers, the voile sleeves that closed below her elbow in gold-threaded cuffs. Similarly, Sula, also an only child, but wedged into a household of throbbing disorder, constantly awry with things, people, voices, and the slamming of doors. Spent hours in the attic behind a roll of linoleum, galloping through her own mind on a gray and white horse, tasting sugar and smelling roses in full view of someone who shared both the taste and the speed.